Chapter 8. A Royal Mess. Alright, bow test number 12, I announced as I readied myself to fire my makeshift bow. I felt proud. I had managed to gather a few branches and vines, and then manipulated them into a lethal weapon. Sort of. So far, all of my attempts have been horrible fails, but I had a pretty good feeling about this time. I placed the twig that was supposed to represent an arrow against the vine, and aimed at the target, my water bucket. I pulled back, and the branch bent as the tension built on the vine. It was handling well, and I couldn't help but smile a bit. It was going to work. Snap. The bow split into two complete halves. The upper limb flew back and slapped me in the face. In shock, I dropped what was left of the bow's remains. I stumbled back and massaged my face. That's it. No more bows.
Oh, but you were doing so well,
the voice mocked.
Perhaps if you tried again.
Forget it, I grumbled. You said that 7 tries ago. I rested on a nearby rock, surrounded by all of my other failed attempts at making weapons. Shattered bows, broken slingshots, chunk of tree bark made to be shields that were too bulky or too oddly cut to use properly, backup hatchets with blades either too dull or too loose to be of any use. I fell under another coughing spell. My sickness had become remarkably worse, so much so that my mood was being affected too. This is ridiculous, I griped. I practically have a bounty on my head. Everything in this forest is still out to kill me, and all I have to defend myself is a hatchet and some rocks.
What about the spears you made?
I glanced tiredly towards the tree I rested said weapon on. They weren't much to look at, just a few exceptionally long branches I found that happened to be semi-straight. Ah, yes, pointy sticks, I said dully. That'll help me hunt for food. Especially considering my aim is about as straight as a curly fry. My stomach let out a low groan at the sound of food. Oh, shut up, I answered irritably. I know you're sick of fruits and veggies. I hung my head in defeat. The game for my survival had changed 3 days ago, and I was still struggling to adapt to the new rules. I never used lethal force against the ponies before, but I never really had to while I was in the Everfree. But after the fiasco that happened a few days ago, ponies were bound to start flooding the forest. If I couldn't find a way to defend myself, I was as good as dead. But if I hurt any of them, my deal with Sakura and Lyra would be off.
Keep the spears on you, the voice recommended. You don't have to throw them well. Just look like you can.
Yeah, I suppose that might work. I stood up, grabbed my hatchet, and stuffed it inside of the rope belt I had recently made. I walked over and examined one of my better spears. It was surprisingly sturdy, considering how thin it was. I was able to fit my hand around it comfortably, and it stood just below my chin. I wasn't sure what type of wood it was. The trees here were still so alien from the ones I had seen back at home, but I was able to take some punishment and still hold. There was a natural bend to it, making it unlikely to be thrown well. As good as it was, I couldn't help but be disappointed that this was the best I could come up with so far. This shouldn't be this hard, I sighed. 3 days! 3 days to get my act together, and I've got nothing to show for it other than a migraine and a bad cough.
Perhaps the ponies will stay away from you out of fear of catching the disease, the voice suggested.
Oh, hardy har har. I couldn't stand the sight of all of my failures anymore. With a grunt of frustration and a nasty cough, I left the small clearing and went for a walk through the trees. My body wasn't taking the lack of available food very well, and I found myself losing more weight than I would have liked. The fact that I was constantly working off whatever food I ate didn't help much either, and my recent sickness only added to the fun. I tried to get my mind off of my declining state, just to enjoy the scenery. It was actually a fairly beautiful day. It was well past noon, and I had yet to run into any trouble with any of the wildlife or ponies, so that was a plus. The sun was barely able to break through some of the leaves of the trees, providing some warmth against the cool breezes. It was odd, really, the trees. They weren't any evergreens that I knew of, but they still managed to keep their green color despite all of the others changing with the season.
This is a waste of time. You should go back to making weapons.
Yeah, 'cause we all know how all that turned out.
It was merely a suggestion. We just do not like the idea of you wandering around the forest unprotected.
Thanks for voicing your concern, but I'm pretty sure I'd be just as unprotected back there. I can handle myself well enough to go for a stroll.
Really?
The voice asked in a tone that was borderline mocking.
Do we need to remind you that you were easily trapped by two ponies with rope? Or how about Twilight's strange powers, and how they seem to be able to bring you to your knees? Even Lyra, a lone pony, managed to tackle you into that pit. Nearly every encounter you have had with them ended with a narrow escape.
Okay. You have a point, I griped. Still, I've wasted too much time on those pieces of scrap. I need to put my mind on something else for a while. I continued walking in silence. My only companion was a small rock I had began kicking in front of me for a while now. The wind slowly rustled the leaves. I paused and took in a deep, refreshing breath. The cool air filled my lungs, rejuvenating my system. For a moment, all of my fears, all of my troubles just seemed to melt away at the sheer beauty of this scene. There wasn't anything that could ruin my walk, not even the frequent coughs and the pains that came with them. A chill coursed through me as a colder breeze swept by. I fumbled with my jacket zipper with numb fingers until I had completely sealed off my shirt from the wind. The breeze carried me out of my peaceful trance and into a newer, more solemn one. Winter would be coming in a couple months at most. Each night was getting colder and colder. With winter approaching, my days of wandering around the forest would become limited. I needed to find a better way to keep myself warm if I wanted to survive the winter wonderland.
You could always leave,
the voice suggested.
Skirt around the town at night. Try to find a better shelter. Look for the portal.
I staggered in my walk for a second. No, I answered heavily. Too risky. No telling how many other villages are around, how far away they are, or whether or not they've received word of me. I'm just gonna have to wing it. I could keep working on making a fire, maybe even try fishing for a change. And the portal. I didn't know how to express it. I wanted nothing more than to go home, but the fear of running into the Timberwolves kept me at bay. True, me risking being caught by the ponies was by no means a good alternative either, but at least then I'd still be alive, hopefully. I just want a bit more experience under my belt before I go trying that. Won't help my family much if I'm dog chow on another world, I joked half-heartedly. I gave the rock a slightly stronger kick, and it flew into the forest's tangle of brushes and grass. I snapped back into reality as the faint sound of voices filled the air. Someone was coming. A small panic seized me, and I dashed into some nearby bushes for cover. I still can't believe she set herself up to be humiliated like that. A cream-colored mare with a mane of 3 shades of red was first to emerge from the dense foliage, tailed by 2 other brightly colored mares. One mare with pink fur had a disgruntled look on her face as she brushed some twigs and leaves out of her long, golden mane and carefully readjusted the lily next to her ear. The other had a much lighter hue of pink fur for her coat with a bouncy, lime-green mane.
I know,
the pony with a lily chimed.
Poor Lyra. She must have lost it. I just can't believe she was standing up for that monster,
the cream-colored mare continued.
She was practically just putting herself up there for that kind of response.
Her friend nodded in agreement.
Do you think she actually talked to it?
The green-haired mare asked suddenly. Her friends paused and looked at her.
Why does that even matter?
The second pink one asked.
Wait, Daisy, don't tell me you believe her!
Daisy looked to the earth and prodded at a rock innocently.
I don't know,
she admitted.
I mean, if what you said was true, then maybe the monster isn't so bad after all. It could have hurt her, but she walked off with barely a scratch.
She looked back up to her friends with a small smile, and I felt one creep up on my face too.
Yeah, but she also said she was stuck in a pit with that thing too,
the cream pony pointed out.
And you heard what Twilight said. That creature is dangerous. Even she doesn't know what Allah can do. For all we know, it probably brainwashed her with Everfree magic or something.
My smile vanished along with Daisy's.
Yeah, you're probably right. I don't know what I was thinking,
she said, waving a hoof dismissively. She gave a reassuring smile and tried to change the subject.
Hey, maybe we can still make it to the running to the leaves if we hurry up this patrol. As if,
the pink one huffed.
Stupid monster. I guess miss an important event like that? This monster patrol is really cutting into my schedule. This is the worst day of my life by far. It's okay, Lily. I know exactly how you feel,
the cream pony said. The trio started walking closer toward my hiding spot.
You know what? How's about when all of this silly monster hunting is over, we go to the spa? My treat.
I accidentally stepped on an old branch, trying to wedge away from the ponies. The resulting snap might as well have been a gunshot or a flare. The 3 ponies stopped dead in their tracks and stared at the bush that was hiding me. They must have seen something, considering the look on their faces.
That sounds like a great idea, Rose,
Lily agreed.
In fact, let's just cut this patrol short and head over there now, okay? Sounds good to me,
Rose replied hurriedly.
Daisy, what about you?
Daisy chuckled nervously.
But of course, after you.
With that, the 3 darted back the way they came. As their hoofsteps faded away, I rose from the bushes, silently cursing that branch. Probably could have learned some valuable information on what was going on in town. Well, at least I have an idea on how Lyra's doing on her side, I said.
Yes, and she doesn't seem to be doing too well, does she?
The voice remarked. I don't know. That one pony looked like she seemed interested.
1 out of 3,
the voice scoffed.
And we saw how quickly the others managed to change her mind.
Give it time, I replied. It's practically 2 versus an entire town right now.
Which makes the effort all the more futile.
An exasperated sigh left me. You and your cynicism. I gathered my bearings and wandered off in a random direction. Lyra and Zecora were trying their best to tell the citizens of Ponyville that I wasn't the bad guy. I could only imagine how she looked standing up for me. I wondered, well, hoped is the better term, that she managed to catch a few ponies that would actually listen to her. It would certainly make things easier on my front. All things considered, she seemed to be doing well for only a few days' worth of work. I chuckled at how I had so eagerly placed my life in the hands of a pony I had just met. In retrospect, maybe it would have been a good idea to go with her and Zecora into Ponyville. Seeing me casually walking with their friends could have alleviated some of the pony's fears.
Yes, and then we could have been frolicked to the town where the ponies would be waiting to whisk you away to a life of sunshine and happiness,
The voice mocked.
It's time you face the facts, Hunter. You are not now, nor will you ever be allowed in that town. The ponies will not accept you. You are too alien to them. You're in the right to try and avoid them.
I grit my teeth. My head was pounding. I hated to admit it, but the voice was convincing. I sighed in defeat and massaged my pulsing temples. My troubling thoughts brought me to a foreign area of the forest. The green leaves were long gone, as it seemed, and were replaced by a vibrant shade of gold, crimson, and orange. I had a thought to go back to more familiar waters, but my curiosity got the better of me. The colors were beautiful, and I had realized that I'd yet to legitimately enjoy the autumnal scenery. The colors were always my mother's favorite part of fall. She'd always corral the family into going to the porch to take family photos. Part of me wondered if my family was going to carry on the tradition, despite my absence. I shook my head, trying to derail my train of thought. I'll get back in time, I told myself. I'll find my way back soon, and it'll be like I never left. I stumbled upon a dirt trail and mindlessly followed it. The trees became less dense the further I walked, and the sun shone above much more brightly because of it. It felt more peaceful out here, and I felt as if I could wander out here for hours. I realized just how long it had been since I started my walk. My legs weren't very happy about it either. I turned around and retraced my steps. After a few minutes, I realized I was lost, horribly lost. I was beginning to regret going further into this part of the forest instead of staying in the more familiar Everfree. I sat down in the lush grass for a rest and tried to map out as much of this forest as I could in my head. A faint rumbling in the distance caused me to lose my train of thought. I could easily recognize it as the sound of hooves pounding on dirt. I had too much experience associated with that sound to think otherwise. But why would the ponies be here of all places? Did Daisy and her friends already manage to tell Twilight about me? I couldn't have even been that close to Ponyville. The sound was getting louder. I dropped my spear and climbed a tree. My clothes' darker colors were sharply contrasting with the reds and yellows of the leaves, and I couldn't position myself any higher. I would just have to pray that the ponies didn't look up. Dozens of multicolored ponies galloped by. As they passed, the trees started shaking, and the leaves began falling off. I cursed my bad luck. Why did the leaves have to fall off now, of all times? I was completely exposed to the ponies below. However, despite my sudden lack of cover, none of the ponies seemed to notice me. They were all focused forward. I noticed that they all had papers with numbers on their flanks. It seemed as if they were running a marathon. A large shadow passed over me. I shielded my eyes as I looked up to better see the pink hot air balloon gently floating in the same direction as the runners. Inside the basket were Pinkie Pie and Spiked. They seemed to be giving comical commentaries over the race through a loud megaphone. When the last of the ponies ran by, I jumped off my perch and retrieved the spear. I started off in the direction the ponies ran, transfixed with confusing thoughts. The marathoners could very well be running away from Ponyville as much as they could be running towards it. Nevertheless, they would have to return to the town eventually. I bet that if I followed them, they would lead me back to the town and ergo to a more familiar part of the forest. The walk was uneventful. The only thing that was out of the ordinary was that all of the leaves had fallen to the ground. It was odd. Not even an hour ago they were still attached to the now barren trees. I deviated from the trail as a mass of ponies came into view. They were all chatting amongst themselves, some cheering, some patting each other on the back. A small part of me longed to join them. My isolation was starting to get to me. Just the taste of social interaction a few days ago was making me want more. A small headache and a heavy cough derailed my thoughts, and I went back to scanning the crowd. One pony stood out from all the others. It wasn't simply because she was the tallest, or that her pure white coat seemed to reflect the sun. It wasn't the fact that she possessed both a horn and a pair of wings, either. Her long, colorful mane that billowed in waves like a flag wouldn't have made a difference. Not even the air of power that accompanied her, that made all of the smaller ponies bow down when she passed by, would have made her stand out to me. No, it was the fact that her one deep purple eye that wasn't covered by her majestic mane was staring directly at me. I froze. The large pony leaned down, never taking her eyes off of me, and said something in Twilight's ear, who happened to be next to the regal pony. Twilight glanced in my direction, and her eyes instantly widened as she quickly nodded. The large pony then turned her head to two other white ponies, each bearing a pair of wings and wearing golden armor. A silent message was relayed, and the two armored ponies took flight and darted in my direction.
"Now would be a very good time to run,"
the voice suggested. I didn't have to hear it twice. I bolted away from the Pegasi, weaving through the sparsely placked trees in hopes of buying a few more seconds. One of them slammed into the earth before me and snarled menacingly. Before I could turn tail and run in the opposite direction, my other pursuer appeared, obstructing my escape. "Give up, creature," one of them growled. "You are outnumbered and you can't outrun us." I took a few steps to the side so they could both be in my line of sight. They watched me with careful eyes and drew closer to each other, wings flared out. "Let's take it easy now," I started cautiously. "Just let me go, and I'll get out of everybody's hair, all right?" They didn't seem too keen on listening. One of them lowered his head and pawed at the ground as if to charge. This wasn't going to end without a fight. I set up my stance with my spear pointed at them in defense. My opponent smirked, and then busted out in laughter. "A stick? You honestly think you can beat us with a stick?" One of them howled. His companion was doubled over, trying to catch enough breath to continue laughing. I scowled at the howling stallions. "Oh, I'll show you what I can do with just a stick." My body went into autopilot as I lunged forward. My grip tightened around the shaft of the spear as I swung it like a bat towards the first guard. A sharp crack echoed in the trees as the wood broke over his head, sending him into a small daze. I silently cursed and dropped the pieces in my hands. I covered the distance between myself and the other guard before he had a chance to react. I clapped my hands around his head and drove my knee into his muzzle. His head reared back from the impact, a few beads of blood trailing from him. I swung a left hook for good measure, and he stumbled to the ground. The first armored Pegasus recovered quickly and lunged. I sidestepped and tore him out of the air by his wing. Something popped in my hands as he hit the cold earth, and he tumbled across the ground as I released my grip. His wing was limp when he rolled to a stop, and I could tell he was biting back a scream. I sprinted up to him, kicked him onto his back, and drove my fist into his exposed underside. The world spun out of control as something collided with my side. The second guard must have come back to his senses, and we rolled across the ground, trying to get the upper hand on each other. Hooves pounded against chests and heads as hands constricted throats and grabbed at faces.
That is enough!
A golden aura encased me and my opponent and separated us. My body temperature skyrocketed as the aura flicked and tried to tug me back. My body contorted itself in as many ways as possible to channel the pain out of my system. When it faded, I collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. I glanced up and could see the fuzzy image of that large, white pony. She was more than opposing up close. I tried to crawl backwards, my eyes locked onto the regal pony, and she followed closely. Everything in me was screaming at me to run, to try and escape, despite all odds. But my body was aching all over from the fight with the guards, and my legs refused to listen. I was lucky to even be able to crawl at the moment. My back hit a tree, and I froze. The two Pegasi scrambled between me and the tall one. "Stay back, Your Highness. This one's dangerous." The guard froze and sheepishly turned around. With all due respect, that is." I sneezed in their direction. The guard snapped into action and pinned me against the tree. "You dare attempt to taint our beloved princess's health with your foul disease?" The one with the broken wings screamed. "You'll pay for your treachery!" He raised his hoof, but before he could strike, the princess spoke up. "Guards, stand down." The two froze and whirled around. "But, Princess—" "No buts. I assure you I will be quite fine." The princess replied in a kind but firm voice. "I have a few plans for dealing with the beast, and it requires I be alone. Return to Ponyville and tell every pony that the situation has been resolved." The two guards were stunned. Yes, ma'am, at once." They bowed and reluctantly retreated. The pony princess lowered her head and narrowed her eyes at me once we were alone. I gulped and tried to make myself as small as I could against the tree. Her long, sharp horn started to glow a light golden color. I braced myself for whatever horrid torture I was about to endure. "Are they gone?" I cracked open an eye. The princess no longer had her lethal horn pointed at me, but instead was staring down at me with curiosity from a casual stance. "Well, are they gone?" she asked again. The princess smirked. "You know, you're not doing a good job representing yourself." I stared at the towering pony in shock. Her small smile faded as she gave me a curious look. "Here, allow me to start. My name is Princess Celestia," she began, gesturing with a hoof exaggeratedly. "I live in a castle back at Canterlot, and I am one of the co-rulers of Equestria. Who are you?" I was still speechless. My mind could not comprehend what was going on. Both Twilight and Lyra said you could talk," Celestia thought out loud. "Perhaps I have the wrong creature." Hunter, I blurted out. The princess stared at me with a slight worry. My words were barely stumbling out. My name, is Hunter. Hunter Gray. Sorry about everything. It's just that There. Celestia hushed. I figured I had the right... Oh, what was the word Lyra used? Humid? Human, I corrected sheepishly. Celestia nodded. Right. Well, human, Twilight has been sending me quite a few letters about you. I gulped. This wasn't going to end well. When I came here to watch the running of the leaves, I had full intentions of capturing you. However, when I came to town, one of my subjects, Lyra, tried to convince me that there was good in you. Now, normally I would put full faith in my student, Twilight. However, Lyra did have a bit of a small crowd rallied behind her and her cause. A faint smile found its way on my face. Lyra was actually making a difference? So, I am conflicted about what to do with you. I could have you arrested for your crimes, or I could listen to Miss Heartstrings and her friends and give you a chance to prove your character. Which would you rather have? The second choice would be nice, I managed to say, still shaking in her presence. I thought so. Celestia grinned as she leaned in close. Allow me to let you in on a little secret. I have heard that a Miss Cheerilee is going to be taking some students from the local school to the Everfree Forest for a biology lesson in exactly 1 week. As I'm sure you are aware, the Everfree can be full of dangerous creatures. I would like for you, she directed a hoof at me, to offer some protection. Does that sound reasonable? Words were still struggling to form. Nodding was the best I could do. Very good. I will inform my subjects that you should no longer be a problem to them. You will no longer be a problem, I trust? She asked sternly. I nodded my head as quickly as my neck would allow. Excellent, she smiled. I hope to hear good things of the field trip. Farewell, Hunter the Human. With that, she turned to leave. Something was still bothering me, though. Wait, I called out. The princess halted and turned her head towards me in curiosity. I stood up and dusted myself off. Why are you doing this for me? I asked. Celestia turned to face me. I noticed we were roughly on eye level with each other. Like I said, Lyra and her followers seemed very adamant that you were not a monster, in spite of what every pony else believed. However, you did not prove her point well in that little skirmish with my guards, although I suppose we could say it was in self-defense. She paused, trying to gauge any reaction for me. I am giving you this chance as a test to prove how much good is in you, she continued, and if you can keep a promise. I'll do my best, I swore. She gave a content nod and walked off again. Wait, I called out again. Celestia paused and glanced at me with a smile. Sorry, I nervously chuckled. I've been barely able to survive on my own. How am I supposed to protect a bunch of kids? I need help. I am sorry, Hunter Gray, but I cannot provide any. You will have to do this on your own. I will not deceive my little ponies into believing you are safe when I myself am not sure. You must understand that the nature of this deal could be misinterpreted easily, and I cannot have you using it to cheat your way into my subjects' trust. That being said, this agreement will only be known between you and me, or any pony else you choose to tell. Celestia's horn glowed. and the shattered halves of my spear floated over to me.
And as for the fools, I'm sure you'll find a way to help them. I have heard you can be very resourceful at times.
She gave me a wink, snapped out her wings, and shot into the sky. I stared blankly at the spot where she had once stood. My gaze fell on the spear in my hand and shifted to my hatchet a few yards away. Thousands of thoughts crashed through my mind. Slowly, ever so slowly, they manifested into one great idea. A grin split across my face.
What are you thinking, Hunter?
Many things, my friend. Many things.
Wonderful.
Hello, YouTube. Skijaramaz here. I'd like to take a moment to let you all know that I am officially starting a Patreon page. And no, I'm not going to be closing it this time, at least not overnight as I did last time. This Patreon page is at present dedicated solely to collecting donations for me to upgrade my equipment. Microphone, laptop, making sure I can keep my voice editing software, the like. There is a link to the Patreon page in the description below. I do hope to see you there. Just so you know, some notable perks of pledging to the Patreon page are getting to see my stuff early and maybe even giving feedback and suggestions on projects that I'm considering but haven't necessarily committed to yet. I always like other opinions. They're nice to have. So, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I'll see you next time.